Welcome, everyone. My name is Kathleen O'Reilly. I am the head of growth and strategy for Accenture's business in North America, and I lead our business here out of New York in our Northeast region. So we're thrilled to have you here tonight and excited to invite you to a conversation with Paul Daugherty, our Chief Innovation and Technology Officer, about the post-digital era, a key theme of our Tech Vision 2019. This is our 19th technology vision, and I know he's going to share a little bit about that history with you, so I won't spoil it. But it really will give us a shape of view into how we believe the world is being shaped going forward from business and technology and how that will impact society. So please join me in welcoming to the stage Paul Daugherty, Accenture's Chief Innovation and Technology Officer.
All right, well, thanks everybody for joining us tonight. It's hard to see you with the lights here. This is a really special night every year that we do to give you a view into the future, and our view into the future and where things are headed. And it's maybe a coincidence that it's also a snowy, ugly, yucky day out there, right? It's awful. So it's those who are here must be truly interested and committed to learning about the future. So give yourselves a round of applause for making it to the event tonight. And we're going to do everything Kathleen said. But before we start, I wanted to do one really quick thing that's special to me and I think a number of people in the room, which is to recognize Pierre Nanterme. Many of you will have known that Pierre stepped down as chairman and CEO of Accenture earlier in January, and he passed away 12 days ago after a serious battle with cancer, far too young at the age of 59. Pierre was a visionary in the industry who ran Accenture for 8 years and transformed us to a digital leader in an innovation-led company. And the results speak for themselves. In his tenure as CEO, tripled the market cap of the company, grew revenues 55%, doubled the headcount, shareholder return over 300%. And I think the thing that Pierre might be most proud of, because he was the biggest champion of equality and diversity in the industry, in business, and at Accenture, was the Thomson Reuters Diversity Index that came out last fall that listed Accenture as the #1 company in the world for diversity and inclusion, which is a great tribute. Which is a great tribute to Pierre and his leadership. And it's special to me with the vision, because every year I would review the vision with Pierre, and we would jointly author the forward of the vision together and both sign our names below it. And this year I couldn't do that for the reasons I just explained, so I want to dedicate this year's vision to Pierre Nanterme in memory for all he did to make Accenture and the world truly greater than. So let's get into the vision. 2019, the 19th year of doing it. I was joking with Ramon. The vision is now an adult, it can vote. So the vision's been around for a long time. And I think we've had a remarkable track record of success with predicting the future. I've been doing this for about 10 years with the vision. And we've been ahead, I think, and been remarkably accurate at predicting a lot of the key technology trends in the industry. And so we're going to give you a taste of where we see that going as we look to the future. But I think we're going to talk about technology, but we have to talk about a lot of other context that's going on around technology, because technology is not happening in a vacuum. How many of you saw the Super Bowl this year? A lot of you saw the Super Bowl, right? What was interesting to me watching the ads at the Super Bowl this year was it reflected the angst that we're all feeling toward technology. The Simple Secure, the security company, ran an ad about drones attacking you in your home and robots attacking your house. Even Amazon, their ad was mocking the shortage of capability of Alexa. That was Amazon in their own ads about Alexa. So the ads reflected generally this, what we're seeing more broadly, which is a shifting consumer perception in technology. Technology used to be the golden industry. We all loved it. We admired technology. We looked up to the companies. That's not the case anymore. And I'd ask you to think about two things as I go through the vision. The first is technology good or bad? Is technology good or bad? So think about your answer to that question. And the second question is, what's your role, your individual role at your organization in answering that question? And that's what we're talking about in the vision this year. So we'll come back to those questions. Let's look at the concerns we have around technology. These are just a few snippets that I could have selected, about 200 or 300 more. The top left is a hacker, symbolizing the fact that just in the first half of 2018, the first 6 months, 3 billion identities were stolen. There's only 4 billion people on the internet, 3 billion identities stolen in 6 months in 2018. The middle picture talks about increasing tension geopolitically. Is technology a national asset? How do we protect national assets? And we see a lot of jockeying for position happening right now, which will probably increase. The top right, fake news. The majority of adults in the world in global surveys say that they do not have a single source of the truth. They can't look anywhere to find the truth. You look at the middle left, inclusion and inequality. A lot of the political problems we're facing are because of inequality and lack of access to opportunity that's already been created by technology. Will we make that problem worse or better? And how will, what roles will we all play? Privacy, data, you can see on the bottom right, one of the companies I admire most from a privacy perspective, Apple, even Apple with a FaceTime hack or bug a couple weeks ago, having a serious privacy vulnerability. And then the bottom, your bottom left, is CRISPR. A couple months ago, unauthorized researcher in China used CRISPR to edit the DNA of 2 embryos, permanently modifying the DNA. Who knows what the implications will be? And this is all creating this techlash. It's not just in the United States or Western world with the big companies. It's happening in China too. Tencent, one of the largest internet companies in China, was suspended by the government. Their gaming licenses were suspended by the government because of concern of the social impact that they were having on the youth of China. So this is a global phenomenon as well. So this is the negative, but we're in this, you look at, I'm a glass half full guy, so you look at the other side of this, and we're in a world of tremendous opportunity. In the top left here, you see work we're doing with United Nations to solve refugee problems using blockchain and artificial intelligence, giving social services to undocumented people who need better protection and services. Great things that we can accomplish. The bottom right blew my mind. I don't know if it blew your mind. When Elon Musk landed his rocket vertically, did that blow your mind? Amazing accomplishment with technology that's transforming the cost and effectiveness of space travel and logistics in space. And you'll recognize some of these other images, increased access to medical services, robotics, et cetera. In the middle, I think, is the headline, though. The middle comes from a tweet from Bill Gates on New Year's Day or around New Year's Day. And a tweet from Bill Gates was talking about the unquestionable progress we're making in the world on child mortality, life expectancy, disease, et cetera. A lot of that due to technology. So while we have a lot of concern around technology, when you look at the big picture, there clearly is a massive opportunity we have. But how do you navigate through that change? And that's what we're talking about with Technology Vision 2019, which is how do you navigate the negatives and the positives and steer your organization to deliver on the opportunity and not make the world a worse place. And back to my question I asked earlier, is it good or bad? Technology is neither good or bad, it's neutral. What's your role in how this turns out? Your role is to steer it right, and that's the roadmap we're trying to provide with the Technology Vision 2019. So we've done this vision for 19 years. I think a key year in the vision was 2013, where we wrote a vision and we put a title on it that said, every business is a digital business. Every business is a digital business. Do y'all think that's true now? Yeah, everybody says, yeah, that's generally true. In 2013, we got attacked. I spent the year in CEOs' offices. Many industries, most industries challenged this notion, said that's about media companies, maybe telecommunications, maybe banks, but it's not my business. I think everybody realized that became true, and we went on with the vision to talk about the nature of disruption and how enterprises needed to think. And then in 2016, we started talking about the role of people in this transformation. People first, technology for people, and kind of how you create the ecosystem around your company. So the question is, where does that leave us? Where do you think we should go with the Technology Vision for 2019? So let me give you a few facts to lay the context for this. In 2018, last year, companies spent $1.1 trillion on digital transformation. Large companies spent $1.1 trillion on digital transformation. In a recent survey, 94% of companies, 94% of executives said they're well on their way with their digital transformation. 68% of them said we're pretty set. We know what we're doing in the digital world. Now, frankly, I question that. I think there's a bit of overconfidence reflected in the survey, but nonetheless, it highlights that we've moved through a period of time from every business is a digital business to everybody really is doing it. And what becomes important now is a new set of rules that we're characterizing as a post-digital era. In an era where everybody's doing digital, everybody's putting digital in their earnings reports and every release they put out and talking about how digital they are, how do you differentiate and define yourself in that new world? You need a new set of rules, you need a new set of technologies, a new set of thinking, and that's what we're talking about with the Technology Vision 2019. So what do we mean by that? What's the post-digital era mean? There's a few new concepts to think about. Individualization, and this is a big concept that asks you to think about it for a while. Individualization, not personalization, individualization. I'll design a service and a product for you that's different than you, that's different than you, that's different than you. Individualization at any point in time, delivered instant on demand, and this idea of momentary markets, where markets form so quickly that by the time you see the market, it might slam closed on you again. And your ability to have your supply chain and your business configured to deliver on markets, in momentary markets in real time becomes critical. So what's an example of that look like? One example that I like to use, because it's a traditional industry, is John Hancock, the insurance company, over 100 years old insurance company. They created a new product called Vitality, a new policy. That's an individualized policy, keyed on lifestyle data, sensor data about you, personal information that they collect, a dynamic policy whose parameters and pricing and the value to you changes over time based on your behavior. That's an example of a company in a traditional industry really thinking about individualization, this idea of on-demand, and again, momentary markets providing different types of coverage and services based on what you're doing at any point in time. We'll talk about some other examples of that in a minute. But think about the other implication of the post-digital world, back to how you navigate between positive and negative, and that's the idea of trust and responsibility. If you're John Hancock's customer and you're giving them personal data, or if you're a company who's giving up your individual data to a pharmaceutical company who's testing a new medical device on you, that company better have your trust, and you better trust them if you're using your product. And trust becomes a differentiator in this world we're moving into. We're going to get into this more a bit later. And responsibility and taking responsible actions is what builds that trust. And trust is earned incrementally through every single action and interaction that you have with your consumers. And I would argue that the winners 5 years from now, which is the horizon we're looking at in the vision, will be those who have greater trust than their competitors. That allows them to construct more valuable services that use the data and trust of their customers in a more profound way. So as we dive deeper into this, we've got 5 trends that we believe are the trends that you need to think about to prepare yourself for the post-digital era. So the post-digital era is about a set of technologies that we call dark power. And that's not a typo. I'll come back. I'll explain. So it's a set of technologies. It's about a new relationship with the consumer that we call Get to Know Me. It's about a new relationship with your workforce that we call the Human Plus Worker. It's about a new way of protecting yourself that we call Secure Us to Secure Me. And it's about a new set of business models that we refer to as My Markets. Those are the trends that make up the post-digital era, and this is the way we believe you need to start thinking to move into this world. So let me dive into a few of the trends here quickly. So dark power, what do we mean by this dark power, and why do we throw this crazy Q in there? So DARQ is about a set of new technologies: distributed ledger, also known as blockchain, artificial intelligence, which is not really new, but it's growing very fast and has a lot of new capability, extended reality, which is augmented reality, virtual reality, new forms of interaction, and then quantum computing. And that's the DARQ of DARQ. And we believe that this is a powerful combinatorial set of technologies. And just like SMAC, who remembers SMAC? We used to talk about SMAC a lot. A number of people. Social Mobile Analytics Cloud was SMAC. 6 years ago, when we said every business is a digital business, SMAC was all the rage, and that's what people were talking about. SMAC was the technology defining the digital age, and it is important. Cloud is still extremely important because we're probably only about 20% of the way through the cloud transformation for most organizations. But the differentiation is going to increasingly come from things that like we see in DARQ, in these different technologies. And you can think about it like a stack. So watch carefully. See a little dance, and then okay. Good PowerPoint effect. So you can think about this like a stack. So quantum computing is a new type of infrastructure. So you've heard Moore's law is dead. Moore's law isn't dead. Moore's law is dead when it comes to transistors and silicon. But we have plenty of technology that will extend and increase computing capacity. Quantum computing is one. Neuromorphic computing is another. Biocomputing is another. So quantum computing is among a family of technologies that will extend the increase in computing power and allow us to solve new problems, and we'll talk about that more in a minute. Distributed ledgers think of as a new middleware and data layer, a new way to distribute and protect data across participants in a process, and really construct a very different business model and way of solving a problem through this new middleware and data layer. Artificial intelligence you can think of as the new application layer. It won't be long from now before any application you buy or build will have machine learning and artificial intelligence inside it, and it will increasingly define the application layer of what we do. And extended reality is the user experience layer, increasingly using new, more powerful, rich interfaces to interact with technology rather than this crazy, I see many of you doing it right now, this crazy thing about thumbs on little 10-ounce pieces of plastic, I think is nuts. Anyway, that's what's happening with the technology of the future. We'll get more into this in a minute, but it's a powerful set of new technologies. They're not all here right now today. Some are, like artificial intelligence. Quantum is a little slower to come, but we'll talk about the reality of that in a few minutes. So trend 2 is called Get to Know Me. So Get to Know Me is talking about this individualization. What does that really mean? Well, think about what we're doing as consumers. I hope none of you are doing this on your phone right now, but think about in the last 60 seconds, think about 1 minute, 60 seconds, 1.1 million people swiped left on Tinder. So I hope none of you are doing that right now in the audience. In the last 60 seconds, 3.7 million people did a Google search. 39 million people sent a WhatsApp message. 138 million people in the last 60 seconds sent an email. In the last 60 seconds, 266,000 hours of Netflix were watched. And if you add that all up, all of that represents consumer behavior, individual behavior that can be tailored and customized to deliver things like John Hancock's service that I described earlier. Or another example, SlicePay that I like. SlicePay is a company in India that is developing innovative new banking services powered by AI for the unbanked. 1.7 billion people in the world are unbanked, meaning no financial system access. So how do you give a credit rating to somebody who's unbanked? SlicePay is using artificial intelligence to look at other things these people do in their lives and other trails about the people to establish a dynamic real-time credit rating to allow the unbanked to quickly become banked and gain access to financial services using the power of the individual data that's surrounding and available to them to do it. So that's Get to Know Me. We'll talk more about some examples of that in a minute. The Human Plus Worker is talking about the new way of, that we need to think about the workforce. We talked about this a lot in our Human Plus Machine book, in our future workforce work, and a lot of other things we're doing. And the point we're making here is that from the research we've done, we believe 90% of jobs will change because of AI. About 50% of those jobs will be transformed significantly. So what are we doing to advance our workforce? Because if you don't build the skills in your workforce, nobody will. The jobs are changing so fast and are so individualized to each company that if you're not building the learning platforms, moving your own workers ahead, you're going to be left behind and you're going to be at a competitive disadvantage to those who can train their workers. And we're finding that in job after job that we look at that's being transformed, in industry after industry, those companies that can move their people to the new jobs are the ones that set themselves apart. Those that look to the market to find the new jobs get shut out because the market doesn't create the new jobs fast enough. You have to do it yourself. The fourth trend is secure us to secure me. The clever little line, enterprises are not victims, they're vectors. What does that mean? It means that every enterprise is just a vector to attack another enterprise. One of the biggest insider trading episodes wasn't a company being hacked. It was the news services that store the disclosures being hacked, and then that being used for an insider trading ring to capitalize on announcements before they became public. So companies were being compromised. The SEC's integrity was at risk because of news organizations that were getting hacked. How do you protect yourself in that world? It's about protecting the ecosystem and about every company taking responsibility to build an ecosystem of partners and competitors and customers that they secure collectively. And that's the only way that we're going to secure the environment we're moving into. And that's a new set of business models as well as technologies. And then finally, My Markets is talking about these new business models, these markets that form and close very quickly. An example here is what Adidas, or if you're in Europe, I guess it's Adidas, the shoe company, who is now has the ability, or is developing the ability to individualize your shoes. You can individualize your shoes at a point in time. This can be colors and design, but it can also be supination, pronation, unique design for the fit of your gait and the way your foot rolls, and things like that. And then they're partnering with Siemens to have real-time manufacturing close to the market so you can get your new shoes very quickly. And how do they know exactly what you need, when you need it, and get you that shoe immediately? That's this idea of this very dynamic business model, dynamic supply chain, fueling these new individualized markets. Anyway, so that's the summary of the vision. Now, the post-digital enterprise, or the post-digital era, is upon us. We all need to think about how we become post-digital enterprises, and these are the 5 trends that we believe are the right ones to think about. The one point I'll make, just in wrapping up real quickly, is I hope this looks a little different than other trend forecasts you see. So I collect them all. I've got a hard drive full of everybody's trend forecasts. Every bank, every analyst firm, any tech company that does trends, I've got them all. And they all look about the same. Top 10 list, machine learning, industrial Internet of Things, et cetera, et cetera. They go on down the list. And we don't really think that, it's interesting, and maybe that adds some value. But we don't think it adds a lot of value to you in running your organization. What we're trying to do, and hopefully you see here, is present a way of thinking about the future that includes all those technologies, but in a context around which you can apply to your business. So, you all ready for the post-digital era? Yeah? Okay. All right. Well, that didn't sound too confident. But we'll hopefully by the end of the evening, we got a little bit more. But let's move into a little bit of a different stage here, and I'm going to ask some friends to help me add some other life and color around the vision. So let me start with Mark Carell. Come on up, Mark. Mark Carell, who knows Mark in the audience? Mark is a longtime friend, and he runs Accenture Labs, which is our network of labs around the world, all over the world, our PhDs, researchers, the guys in the lab coats inventing the new stuff.
That's right.
Mark, what would be helpful to hear from you, I think, is maybe about the technology. DARQ, quantum computing, is it real? What do you see happening with that?
So first of all, DARQ, I'm going to have to wear these clothes, like black clothes, for the whole year, of the tech vision. So I look like a ninja type of things. But so more seriously, I love the DARQ things. And something that we've discovered in the lab is that there's no end to innovation, and we're pushing really the boundaries of technology. So we started to work on quantum computing like 2 years ago. And I can tell you this is amazing what the team has been doing. The first thing is like 2 years ago, we started to embark with Biogen to discuss about drug discovery. Yep. And so we've been looking at how we can connect to the D-Wave computer in Canada using 1 qubit as an SDK, basically, to program all these things. And we've been completely reinventing how you can synthesize new drugs. And this is really amazing because we're still working on the platform with Biogen, and hopefully one day, this is something that we're going to be able to drive into production. Right now it's pilot, but it's going to drive.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Mark, but I think what Biogen said is the problem that we solved with quantum computing would have taken, I think it was 1,000 years with classical computing. So that's the power.
And we go down to like a few months and everything, and this is really amazing. So now, there's another thing that I'm very proud of, and I think I mentioned that to you, last time, is just the fact that we're filing a patent, which is really cool. If you think about the tech vision, it's all about momentary market and hyper-personalization. And there's one thing that quantum can do better than anything else in the world, is just to rework the matchmaking for organ donation. When someone has an accident, you have basically the organ, and there is a life expectancy for this organ. It's like 2 hours for a kidney, it's more for a lung and everything. So you have this very short time frame where you need to figure out exactly what's going to be the best receiver. Imagine the computing power you need to have, all the variables you need to put, all these things to make it happen. Quantum computing is going to help us to do that. So we work with National Health Services in the UK to rethink about their algorithm and rebuild that using quantum computing. I'm very very excited about these things.
Awesome. That's
All right.
great, Mark. Thanks.
Thanks,
So
Paul.
that's what's happening with quantum computing. And if you heard, just think about what Mark said. Application programming interfaces for quantum. SDK, which is actually a Python in this case. Anybody who can code Python can access quantum, seriously, can access quantum APIs. Quantum clouds. If you think about this is too hard for me, I'm not going to buy my own quantum computer and chill it down to 270 degrees Celsius below zero. It'll be quantum clouds that you access, and that's the business model that's developing in the industry. So this will be a lot more accessible than you think. So let me move on with another friend who's here. Raman, why don't you come up and join me for a minute? Raman Chowdhury, and I have to pull out a piece of paper to introduce Raman, even though she's a friend of mine. Because there's so much to talk about with you, Raman. So I just want to give you a context for why I wanted to invite Raman on stage. You lead responsible AI for us. You've been with Accenture 2 years with an amazing background in data science, coming from degrees at MIT, Columbia University, doctorate in political science from UCSD in California. It's an amazing academic background. Recognized in San Francisco and the Bay Area as one of the 40 under 40 for the amazing innovation you're doing.
Barely made it under the wire.
But you got there. And Information Week just named you recently one of the 10 influential women in AI and machine learning. So high five.
All right, thanks.
But Raman and I have lots of fascinating discussions, and it's around the area of responsible AI. So maybe you can just start us off talking about what do you think of what we just talked about? Trust, responsibility, this post-digital age, and maybe also into this idea of individualization and what new responsibilities are we thinking about at Accenture and do companies need to think about?
Absolutely. I think I was having a few conversations earlier about, there is a fine line between personalization, things we want to see, and the uncanny valley, the creepiness factor. How do we know where that line is? This is where responsible AI comes in. We need to understand what people want, and most importantly, all these technologies now are becoming a two-way street. It's companies communicating with consumers, and importantly, consumers having the agency and the ability to communicate back to companies. This is what I want, this is what I don't want. So another aspect of personalization is how do I personalize to what I don't want to see? Or how do I know how my data is being used? How can I opt out when I think it's important to me?
So I think one of the things we struggle with, and that I struggle with, is how do you resolve the debates on this? So is it about opt-in or opt-out? Is there a single set of values that consumers will have? Is there a single set of standards and values that companies can build into their products?
And what you are tapping into, Paul, is a philosophical, ethical question that goes back to the days of Aristotle. I mean, I jokingly call responsible. There's the Gartner hype cycles. We have the hype cycle in responsible AI. You start off with these very bold and
that started with Aristotle?
It basically does. Human flourishing. AI should do no harm. But then you fall into what I call the trough of philosophy. What does it mean to be fair, right? What does it mean to have values? Whose values? My values, your values, Japan's values? Well, how do we then exercise on it? And this is where we come in. This is where Accenture helps you action on these principles, these values at your company, in your organization. We help you exercise that and translate your company's goal and mission into actionable, responsible AI.
We'll talk about one element of that, I guess related at least, is we talk about responsible AI is the issue of fairness, in addition to the values, the issue of fairness, which you've done a lot of work in. And why don't you tell us about the AI Fairness Toolkit, which I think is one of the most important capabilities that you and in Accenture, frankly, and you and your team developed this
Absolutely. So the best part of my job is I don't just have to think and philosophize, I have to action. Actually, it's a part of my job I enjoy the most because it holds all of us accountable to making sure we're not just talking, that we're doing. So the Fairness Tool was prototyped with the Turing Institute in the UK, and we took the academic literature on fairness, of which there's a massive body of literature. And we looked at it in three ways: scalability, generalizability, integrability. So scalability, anyone here who works at an enterprise company knows what that means. Generalizability, can any data scientist understand and use this tool? We don't want it to require some sort of niche knowledge. And I think most importantly, having been a data scientist, Integrability. I need to create processes that integrate seamlessly into a data science workflow. Again, having been a data scientist, I need to make sure you're delivering on time, that you're delivering for your clients. So a fairness tool looks at bias and gives you options for bias mitigation in your data and your models.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And back to the idea of trust. Think about the individualization and things we're talking about with trust. One of the questions that I think about a lot, and that we've talked to a lot of clients about, is do consumers understand trust? And how do you see that happening? What differences do you see as individuals grapple with this idea of trust? Do I trust, not to single anybody out, do I trust a Facebook? Do I trust a Google? Do I trust my insurance company with these services? How do you see that evolving?
I think you're touching on one of the most important things. I live in San Francisco. I'm here visiting, talk tech vision, talk to clients, et cetera. One thing that we actually don't really think about enough is, as technology companies, we have delivered some of the most world-changing technologies. Paul just mentioned a few of them just from this past year. And in doing so, we created this amazing bank of trust, right? We all hold these things in our hands, which essentially we can do so many wonderful things for free. But this trust is not infinite. We are not owed this trust by people. And what is happening, unfortunately, is we are rapidly burning through that trust. So what we need to do is create artificial intelligence that enables trust to rebuild it and understand, again, that this is a two-way street. We give to people, and then we get back.
Let's do a little experiment around that.
Uh-oh.
A little experiment. So here we go. So everybody have a phone? I'd be shocked if any of you don't. Anybody not have a phone? Okay. Take out your phone. Everybody take out their phone. So hold up your phone. Everybody got their phone out? Okay. Unlock your phone. Is your phone unlocked? So mine's unlocked. Is yours unlocked?
Mine is unlocked.
Yours is unlocked. Okay. Give your unlocked phone to your neighbor.
You gonna swipe left for me on Tinder?
I don't know. I'll check out your profile.
Paul is deciding my Friday night.
Really, really interesting. Okay, everybody got their neighbor's phone? Do something on the phone. Smile. Here, selfie.
All right, let's crowd selfie.
Selfie, ready? There you go. Okay. All right. You can give the phone back now. Okay, everybody got their phones back? We have security outside. Get the business card of the person next to you in case you find some implications later. The point of that, though, was just trust. In handing our phone to our neighbor, you did basically the same thing that you're doing, using a lot of internet services that you opt into, and a lot of business services that you just turn on without thinking about. And I think that's one thing that we all have to think about as individuals is how do we protect our own data? What value exchange do we want to enter into with companies? And I think that consumer mentality that we need to educate ourselves on and educate consumers on is really critical. And I think business has a role in educating their consumers to understand these things better, and that's part of the equation of building trust.
Absolutely.
Would you agree?
I'm 100%.
Okay, and I didn't do any other applications in there.
I don't know, I didn't get to see.
Okay. Thanks a lot, Ramon.
Thank you, Paul.
Okay, I'm really excited about the next section that we're going to move into here. We're going to get deep now, going into what this looks like with a particular company. I'm really thrilled to have Shankar here with me from Verizon. And just to give people a sense of who you are, a lot of people may know you. Come on up and sit down. Great to have you with us tonight.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for agreeing. There you are. Yeah, so have a seat. And Verizon's an amazing company, a company I have huge respect for. You're the global senior vice president and global CIO of Verizon, running a massive team. I don't even know how big it is, driving a lot of technology across Verizon to enable the business. And a good place to start would be, maybe tell us a little bit about Verizon so we can understand some of the other comments you're going to have. Where's Verizon right now? And is one of the, I think, Fortune 20 company, massive company, going digital, been digital for a long time. All this innovation is important. What's up at Verizon, and what are some of your priorities?
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Paul. Great to be here. Hello, everyone. So Verizon, I'm sure many of you know here in this market, communication service provider, headquartered here in beautiful New York City. A big focus for us, based on your question, is this Verizon 2.0 mission that we have embarked on now, right? So we have organized the company around consumer segments, basically. So we have 3 divisions that we have set up: a consumer group, a business group, and a Verizon media group, which is really the combination of former AOL and Yahoo. A big focus for Verizon now is to build 5G. So I'm sure many of you here are reading articles about what 5G can bring, and this is something that we believe in at the core, where 5G is really the one that's going to usher in the 4th industrial revolution. And we are out there in the market, commercially available in 4 markets that we launched last year. So that's a big focus area for us. And 5G gives a plethora of opportunities for us to really bring value to the society, about 8 different currencies that it makes available. So that's really a big focus for Verizon.
That's fantastic. And 5G, I didn't highlight it tonight, but 5G we do talk about in the vision as a transformative technology. And the way I put it is 4G is to smartphones and apps as 5G is to the experience economy. I think 5G is going to enable a lot more experiences, and just like 4G and the smartphone over the last 10 years enabled the Airbnb and all the app models we have, I think we have a whole different set of innovation ahead of us enabled by 5G, and some of the DARQ technologies get into that a little bit. I guess I was going to ask you, do you agree with that? Is that the way?
Absolutely, right? So if you think about, take for instance, one of the currencies, when we talk about 8 currencies with 5G, one of the currencies is about extremely low latency. Right. You're talking single-digit millisecond, 5 millisecond latency on your air interface, right, between your. So now think about the possibility of what that gives you. So when you talk about the DARQ, the R part of it, right, the reality part of it, for virtual reality to work, really you want that latency to be less than 20 milliseconds, otherwise you get sick, right? So the possibility of what it is, with 5G, that's a good example. And there's plenty more in terms of energy efficiencies, the high throughputs that we can get with 5G, et cetera.
No, I couldn't agree more. And with that R part of DARQ, the extended reality, what we do believe exactly as you said, 5G is going to be a big driver, that the extended reality is kind of moved slow because of the maturity of the headsets, and combined with the lack of access through 5G, and we think it's really poised to take off, which is why we highlighted it there.
Absolutely.
So what about individualization? I talked about that earlier. I talked about this get-to-know-me idea. How many customers does Verizon have?
So on Verizon Wireless, we have about 113 million customers.
So a lot of customers. So when you think about, how do you think about individualization when you think about the 130 million customers, the business customers, different markets you serve?
So individualization, I think we call it hyper-personalization, right? It's really a segment of one, rather than traditionally how we have approached customer segmentation, where we group customers into deciles, centiles, where you really are one among others who look like you. Here, when you talk about individualization, it's specifically for that customer. How do you provide service offerings that are tailored to that customer? And also, how do you take care of their service needs, anticipating them ahead of time, and doing all that, exactly as Ruman and you talked about, is with getting consent from customer in terms of how we use their data, safeguarding their data, and ultimately providing those personalized, hyper-personalized services.
Yeah, it'd be good for you to maybe go into that a little bit more, because I think there's a lot of people have read and seen a lot over the last several years about the idea of mobile exhaust, all the information that consumers create, and using mobile devices, location info, all sorts of other things. We were talking about this earlier. Maybe you can share some of your thoughts on a very different way that Verizon's thinking about that in this era of trust.
Yeah, there's tons of telemetry in terms of what comes from your devices, the interaction that customers have with our different channels, whatever the point of interaction is. So the whole idea is, how do you make sure in real time you get all that data? There is clearly an explosion of data in our hands right now. How do you convert that data to an insight in real time and be able to act on that insight to provide that experience to that customer, right? So, if you look at one example to make the point. So there is our customers today, they use the phones, they make calls, et cetera, and we realize at any point in real time, let's say there's a customer who's making an international call and doesn't have the right package, the international calling plan, if you will, on their account. Now, the moment they hang up after they make the first call, we're able to notify the customers as to the sticker shock they're going to see in the bill, which comes up 30 days from now.
Right.
Prior to that, think about because we would send bills once a month. So 30 days goes by, the customer is not aware of this, they would rack up all these charges, and they see a hefty bill. They would call up disputing those charges, saying, I did not know about this. Now, the whole idea of individualization or hyper-personalization is how we demonstrate to the customers at all points in time, at all moments, we have their back. And this is one example where, and we see thousands of customers who take advantage of that to say, yes, I made a call to Singapore, I don't have a plan, and we send a message right away to say, take an action right now. Embed a call to action. If you think you're going to be making more calls in this build cycle, just add to this. So that way you're paying a fixed fee versus racking up these per minute charges as well.
I think that's a powerful example because it's simple, right? Yeah. It's one thing, but it builds trust. The counter to that is an experience I have. I won't mention the airline, but every time I fly, I fly a lot, way too much, so I'm a very high revenue flyer on one particular airline. And every time I use their mobile app to check in or go to a kiosk, what they say is they bring up a big box that's hard to avoid saying, click on this box to pay $150 for extra frequent flyer miles. Yeah. And hunt and see if you can find the box to avoid this, which is a tiny little X somewhere else. So what that tells me is, as one of their highest revenue customers, the relationship doesn't matter all that much. They'd rather trick me into spending some money than build trust with me. That versus you reaching out proactively, using that moment. I guess the point I was making is, do you think it's a lot of moments to build trust, or is it principles or one big thing? How do you think you build trust?
There is a lot of moments there, right? At first, we have to believe in this. The same example that you gave in our parlance, right? If you take Fios, for instance, customers in the Northeast Corridor who have Fios service, so you have a triple play a bundle, you have voice, data, video, and we know customers who have video packages that have hundreds of channels, but they don't really watch all those channels, right? So how do you really, rather than always finding a moment to upsell to customers, how do you right sell to customers? We do know the Wi-Fi, there's 50 devices hanging off the Wi-Fi that is craving for the bandwidth. So how do you really right sell to those customers and say, listen, we have a value proposition for you. Your bill is not going to go up. We're going to downgrade your TV package because you're not using that whole, all the channels. We're going to up your speed this way to gigabit speeds. So now the customer feels like this is a company that's got my back, right? So finding all those moments and making sure that we are demonstrating that, saying this is, wow, okay, thank you.
That was a strong affirmation of your point.
So finding those moments is critical, right?
Yeah, no, that's very powerful. Maybe move into another area. So we talked about data access, trust, individualization. I look at what you're doing in Verizon with artificial intelligence. I think you're really leading in finding new ways to deliver business value with artificial intelligence, and in some cases pushing the envelope on that. Do you want to talk a little bit about why you're doing that and how you see the role of artificial intelligence in business going forward?
Artificial intelligence is really at an inflection point right now, right? So a few reasons why. Clearly, there is data explosion. The cost of compute is very low with GPUs, TPUs, et cetera. And all the algorithms that are out there to build these models, which at one point were all in research papers, now those are all available open source. And then enter the auto ML platforms as well, which is now essentially democratizing data science to many, many more developers. So a combination of these four things is truly creating that inflection point for us. So now, getting to how we are using artificial intelligence. If I look at the spectrum of artificial intelligence, it's all the way from your simple rules-based rules engines to your bots, your robotic process automation, to your automated assistants, your digital assistants, your chatbots, to more augmentation assistants as well. This is where the chatbot takes a different persona when it's not able to handle the customer's query automatically. How does it take a different persona to help the agent who is going to address the customer in terms of improving their productivity? We're also looking...
In that example, do they help the agent in real time?
Absolutely, right? In real time, whether I'm a chat agent or a call center agent, how does the bot listen in on the conversation and provide and serve up the right kind of information to the agent, so that way they are much more productive in addressing what the customer's concerns are. The other thing that we are doing as well is in the area of computer vision. I talked about 5G. With 5G, a few challenges emerge. So we have to densify our networks, right? Let me get a sip of water. So as we densify our networks in these markets,
Densify.
meaning, so we have, for instance, we have a network today with all these macro towers, these huge towers that you see, 70,000 cell towers. So when we talk about densification, how do we really put these antennas much closer to where customers are, right? That's what we mean when we talk about densification. So we are applying computer vision in a big way to really see how can we take street view images that are out there, figure out where are the poles by the street, what kind of a texture, what material is that pole, what is the height of that pole, because none of that data is readily available. So you have to use computer vision to really figure these things out. What is the height of that pole? And the problem we're trying to solve there is how do we get maximum coverage with placing minimal number of nodes, the 5G nodes? So it's a very interesting AI computer vision problem. Because of the unique propagation characteristics of the spectrum that we have as well, it's important for us to know which side of the house will get the signal coming in, right, et cetera. So down to that level of detail we'll have to go. There is, if it's a high rise, how high can I go to get that coverage? All that information we'll have to deduce from really looking at these images.
That's fascinating. We didn't talk about this earlier, but I'd be interested in your view. So how does that transform then or change the job and the role of the planners and the site engineers and the technicians?
So think about it, right? Because previously, when we were building out the networks, we would do the design, but then we will validate the design by essentially having to ride along, make sure we take readings manually in different places to make sure that this coverage is good, et cetera. Now, it's a combination of really figuring out how you use this technology, which will ultimately feed in to this RF planning tool, if you will, taking all this data in terms of where the poles are, the heights, et cetera, and figure out the optimal route. Absent that data, it's just not humanly possible to be able to really densify network at this scale. Yeah. So that is really how we are harnessing the power of AI.
So think about it. So you talked about very different areas of the company, the network space there.
Yes.
And using AI in deployment, which is changing jobs. You talked about the call center agents using AI to help them improve their skills as well as to offload calls for customers. So we talked about the human plus trend in here, the workforce. Verizon's a big company, I'm not sure how many employees, but big.
135,000.
135,000, so very big workforce. How do you think about the human plus angle on this, and how do you think about the skills of the workforce and the company's role, your role around making sure that people, can operate in this world we're moving into?
Because let's pick on the call center example or the chat center example, right? So this human plus machine is really coming into play in a very, very good way there. So when we talk about the chatbot that's focused on automation, that's facing the customer, when it is not successful in identifying, because it's not that easy to really have these chatbots carry on multi-minute conversations completely in an automated way, right? So there is still a lot of research happening in where if you have a customer is saying something with multiple supplemental intents, how do you really keep that conversation going? So now in the cases where the chatbot is unsuccessful, now there is a trainer, a knowledge engineer that comes in to essentially train the chatbot on here is really how you should interpret this sentence, right? So that's where human is teaching the chatbot.
Yep.
And then when the chatbot is facing the agent, so the chatbot is really providing these superhuman powers to the agent to be able to, so this symbiotic relationship is just amazing to see. Now, these are all new skills that we are having to develop. What does a knowledge engineer do? How do they interact with the chatbot? What skills should they have? How should the agent work with the chatbot side by side? And it's truly opening up an opportunity for us to reimagine the way work gets done. This is one example I'm giving you, but pretty much every department is looking at how we should be operating in this mode using the power of AI across the entire spectrum. There are some back office functions which strictly focus on robotic process automation.
Right.
And then that whole spectrum, we're making sure that we are using that across the board.
That's amazing. Do you think that, from your experience, is it about kind of being agile and supporting people as they're learning to use these new tools, or are there steps you're taking to prepare people with the basic skills as they move forward?
Yeah, so this is where a big emphasis on talent transformation as well, right? So knowing exactly what how we are reimagining the work, what is the North Star where we want to go, what are the skills we have today, and what is the gap that we have to close, and making sure that we are rolling out very structured training programs. And it's a two-way street, so we encourage our employees as well to do some self-directed learning, but what is important is to share with them what is the North Star where we are going, so that way they can prepare and make sure that they have the relevant skills for the future.
Yeah, that's a great example of this human plus idea of taking accountability, of preparing your workforce for these changes. A really, really great example that we strongly believe in as well. One final area to delve into, and then we're going to open it up for questions. So think about questions you might have, assuming I interpreted this right. And we have another countdown timer for questions. Is that right? Okay, thank you. Just making sure. One other area we didn't talk about is security, which is mission critical in the business that you operate in. We talked about this idea of new ways of thinking about security, not just securing your connections, but looking at partners, apps that run on your network, et cetera. Maybe talk about, do you buy this idea of the ecosystem view, vectors, and taking a broader view of how you truly protect your business?
Big time, big time. And I think exactly like how you laid it out in the trends talk as well, because enterprises now are becoming vectors, right? So with the digital ecosystem, clearly what we have done is now the attack vector, the attack surface, and the threat vectors have increased significantly. So simple examples of how we are approaching that is, it's a framework that we have put in place to really make sure, one, we have a good, solid understanding of who our partners are in this ecosystem. That's number one. What is the kind of data that we are sharing with these third parties, right, with these partners? Identifying that is important. Profiling that and making sure that you have that inventoried and that is a process to keep that up to date is critical. Then access management to that is important as well. So now what kind of data you're sending, and also what protection mechanisms do you have in place? Is that masked? Is that encrypted? Is that tokenized? You name it. There's all those protection mechanisms that we'll have to take, and make sure that this whole process is just not a one and done. Right. You have to make sure that it is maintained on a regular basis as well. So we have a practice where we periodically audit our ecosystem partners as well to make sure that if it's our customer data that is with them, are they safeguarding? Are they taking the right kind of protection measures that we expect? And all the way from the point when we get into an agreement with these third parties to throughout the life cycle, this is the framework that we use to ensure that the data is always secure.
That's if you think about that, that sounds very different than the security function typically. It really sounds like security as a key process in the business. Is that
absolutely right? So there are examples, and we learned this as well. So because in this whole approach of every enterprise is adopting cloud, this is a case in point that I just will show you. So we had this point where there are agreements that we have with vendors. They use the data, and now what if one of those enterprises that we are working with chooses to take that data, put it on a public cloud, and one of the common mistakes that people make, if you don't know what you're doing in the public cloud, you just put it on an S3 bucket and just give access to public, right? Folks will know. And that, when you do that, you really see, what happens. Because you had a process, you had an agreement in place, but in that journey to go to the cloud, inadvertently something happened, but at the end of the day, it's your data that gets exposed out there. So how do you make sure that it's all ticked and tied throughout the life cycle is important.
That's good. I lied. I'm going to ask you one more question. Then we'll go to the questions from the audience. So just looking at the headline, I started out with this idea of post-digital and characterizing this in that way. And the reason is that I believe that you need to think differently moving forward about some of the applications. It's not just about your kind of the omni-channels, the digital workplace, and that sort of thing. Question to you, do you buy that? Do you buy the post-digital idea and this idea that you need to think differently than we did to date as we look forward at where this is all going?
One thing I would say, though, is the post-digital, I think many companies, exactly to the point you were making before, if someone says they're completely, of course, other than, of course, someone who was born in the cloud and the digital natives, right, that they're done with their digital transformation journey, I would question that, right? So I think it's early to say that we are done with the digital, everything is there, done, we move to the post, but different companies are in different stages of that maturity. So still, when you talk about SMAC, very much Cloud is still a big play. To your point, just 20% of them are in the cloud.
Yeah.
Still a long journey to get to, right? So analytics, yes, a lot of focus was there on advanced analytics. Now enter artificial intelligence. It's still within the same umbrella. Mobile continues to be a big play. Companies are still pivoting to being that digitally oriented, mobile-first company.
Good for your business.
Yes, absolutely. It's good for us, so we love it. So I think I would say, these are all the right areas, but we are not at a point right now to say digital transformation is done.
Yeah, I agree.
It is really a continuum that we are in.
I guess the way I've been explaining this to people is we're not saying digital's over because there's still digital work to do. We're saying the rules are different, and let's just stop using the word digital. My hope is, just like we don't call this the post-electricity electricity era and post-electricity, stop talking about digital and start talking about what we're doing and design your strategies accordingly.
Absolutely.
Great. Let's go to questions, and we'll open this up for Shankar and myself, and Mark and Raman are still with us. So any questions from the group? I'm sure there are some out there. Special bonus point for the first question. There's one in the back there.
Hey, Paul. It's me again. You used the sort of the hierarchy of big data. Then we go to knowledge, and you have knowledge engineers and information. But the one word that's missing here is wisdom. So how do we transform from big data to big wisdom?
Ooh, good one. I guess I'll start with that. It'd be interesting in your view, Shankar, and raise your hand if Raman and Mark, if you want to weigh into this as well. I think that's the progression that we really need to be on with thinking about all these things. Data is just that you can infer from data to get insights or to get information. You can take the information and generate insights about that, and you can use that to figure out things you might do. But that's very different than wisdom. And when I think, it's when we think about AI and this human plus machine thing that we talk about, the AI is very good at, machine learning in particular is very good at inferring information and potential actions from data. AI doesn't contain, I would argue, doesn't contain any wisdom in most of its forms right now, and it doesn't even accumulate the wisdom. It just learns behavior based on past data. That will change going forward. There's a lot of advances being made in new forms of symbolic AI. There's thoughts around common sense AI and how you can embody broader principles, but it's still pretty basic models and rules. So I think wisdom becomes something we need to build and maintain as a really uniquely human capability. And we see that when we look at the skills that we need in this new environment. It's about things like complex problem solving, creativity, big skill that we need from humans in this new environment. Things like sensory perception, things like social emotional response, which are kind of collective human wisdom in some respects that are the real skills we need to focus on.
Yeah, I would, along the same lines, with a slight twist. So if you look at the data and the information today, right, so I would classify it as 3 categories. What you know you don't know, what you don't know you don't know, right? So if your definition of wisdom is, hey, is there a tool or a technology or an enabler that's going to give me some insights, like, in the 3rd category, what you don't know? Yes, artificial intelligence does have an opportunity to really, open up your mind on, what, I didn't even know that I was going after this problem, but looks like there is something out here. There are so many examples where people who have really started with big data and do this mining over time, and they see these kind of patterns that they were never even after in the first place.
Unsupervised learning.
Exactly, right? So I think there is somewhere in that, there is some of that in terms of, how you go after that unknown unknowns, discovering the unknown unknowns. Clearly, AI has the potential to do that.
Question, who has the mics? We have 2 questions up front on both sides. Okay, we'll start with Kay.
Yes, hi, Kay Koplovitz. We're talking about machine learning and AI, obviously very important across every sector of industry. But I want to know what we're going to do to not prejudice machine learning for the elimination of inclusion and diversity, because I think it's a real threat if we're dependent on past behavior or even current behavior. So could you speak to that?
I think there is an expert in the room that I would think, Ruman should really take that one. So we had some.
Yeah, as the mic's getting to Ruman, maybe you can shift the mic over. Ruman, are you still wired? Okay, why don't you stand up, Ruman, so they know which mic you are. Can you turn on Ruman?
Am I on? There you go.
Okay.
I don't know which way to face. I'm just going to come over here. Excellent question. I'm so glad you asked it. So when we think about artificial intelligence and automating processes, there's so much to worry about when we think about bias, et cetera. And there have already been some interesting cases, things to think about that are being applied today. You might want to think, if you know the history of finance, you may know about something called redlining, where in particular districts, African American communities, Catholic communities were discriminated against on the basis of religion and color. And digital redlining is the term that refers to the fact that this history of redlining, that it goes so far back, over 100 years, 100 years or so, is reflected in the technologies that we build today. So building on the question about wisdom, we need to understand our own human failings. So what I'll say is, the good thing is that artificial intelligence acts as a moral mirror. It reflects our own bad habits back onto ourselves. I don't like anthropomorphizing AI. This is the only place that I do. It is very much like a child. As a parent, it makes you be a better person because you see your child reflecting your values. Artificial intelligence is the same way, so we need to think of it as an opportunity to help identify and to fix the problems that are wrong. Otherwise, solving the problems of inclusion and diversity seem insurmountable. Now we can, with AI intelligently used, wisely used, pinpoint where we can take action and what we can do.
Just to point out, Adam, what Ruman said, because I think that's really important. I think if we use AI properly and apply it properly, which is what a lot of the work Ruman's doing, we do have the potential to to reduce bias, from current. A simple example is in AI in a consumer lending algorithm. If you have a human making a biased lending decision because they didn't like the nature of who was applying, you'd have a hard time really figuring out exactly what happened, why they made the decision, et cetera. If it's an algorithm that operated and made a decision you didn't like within your fairness guidelines because of the data that was fed, you can figure that out, you can adjust, and you can use the types of tools Ruman has developed to correct for that and create a more fair process as you go. So I think AI allows us to correct for some of the human bias we might have, but the issue is there's not absolutes in what's biased and what's not, which is why you have to have a lot of human intervention in the way that you tune these fairness models. But good question. There's another one right up here.
Hi, my name's Leanne DeWeiser. I run an organization called CS for All. We're putting computer science education in all the public schools in America and started here in New York City thanks to some work from Accenture. And I have the dual privilege of also having studied computer science at Carnegie Mellon, working with Luis von Ahn, and your human plus worker really sounds to me a lot like his human computation. And your description of that synergy really shifts the thinking from creating third graders who will enter your workforce in 20 years, right? How do we prepare them not to be just the creators of tomorrow, but the teachers of what we create tomorrow? So if you have any thoughts around that human plus worker for the 20 years from now, I'd love to hear any ideas.
Whew. You take that one.
Yeah. I could talk for a while about CS for All and what a great organization you are as a distraction, but CS for All is doing great stuff. Yeah, I think I don't know that there's any magic answer to it, but we're big supporters of CS for All and Code.org and Girls Who Code, who's here tonight, and many other organizations who are advocating for really intervening in the way we're developing the talent of tomorrow. I believe the key to the future is a digital literacy for every single child. Digital literacy, we don't need to make them a coder, but you need digital literacy in every single child, and human education and human skills. Because if you teach them digital literacy with rote or automated skills, that they're not going to be successful in the increasingly automated world we're moving into. So that's why the idea of kindergarten as the entry point for the first time for digital skills is important, even earlier, depending on what you're doing with your children. Every exposure at every grade level to digital literacy, again, not to create more coders or machine learning engineers necessarily, but to make sure they have fluency in whatever profession they're going into of using the tools that'll be important to their human plus machine future. And then, and I think what I don't know the answer to, and we're doing a lot more research on, is what exactly do we need to train people for, especially when you look 20 years out. I do believe it's the human skills, generally. Some of the things I mentioned earlier, creativity, complex problem solving, cross-domain extrapolation versus interpolation that machines do. There's a variety of things you can identify, but how do you teach and train those? I think generally speaking, it's going to be a lot less teach to test, a lot more experiential learning in schools, which is a challenge given the way the educational system is structured. So I think that's the thoughts I have, and I don't think there's any easy answer, but that's the foundation of it. And thanks for the work you're doing, it's great. Question in the back?
Yeah, hi. Paul, you, in 2013, you made a bold statement about every business being digital, and you got a lot of techlash. We're now a few years later, and you have the privilege of learning about multiple companies' problems and opportunities. I wondered if, and I don't think anybody in this room would disagree that yes, DARQ, quantum, AI, blockchain is going to be transformative. So, and I read your book, Human Plus Machine, great book, everyone should read it. A little plug for you. And this is all great. I don't think there's anything here that we would disagree with. If we all agreed to sign an NDA, what would be the risky bet that you would put on tomorrow the way that was made in 2013? What would be the title instead of post-digital? What would it be?
What was the question? What would post-digital be 5 years from now?
Yes, or 10.
Or 10 years from now? I think it's. I would hone in on the words individual and experience. And I think experience in particular. I think the ability, the magic skill of the next 10 years, I believe, is creating experiences. It's people with storytelling skills that can imagine what how a call center operator might interact with technology to self-improve their skills, how children might use experiential learning skills to enhance their creative problem-solving skills and such. And in industry after industry, and, interesting work we're doing in the oil industry in creating digital oil field services technicians who use gaming engines to drill for oil, completely different skills, reimagined, and it's about their experience. How do you combine their knowledge and their hands-on experience of pipe fitting with the digital skills of understanding how to really run the operations? And so that storytelling and experience creation, I think, is the magic skill of the future. I would predict that we bemoan the lack of 600,000 open jobs. 600,000 people were short for coding in the U.S. right now. I don't know how many hundreds of thousands were short on machine learning people, whatever the number is. I think it's 5 million globally is the number of people used for that. Big numbers. I think we'll be bemoaning the lack of experiential designers that can create human experience around the use of the technology as we look to the future, and that's what's going to shape the future. And it'll be less device dependent, more enabled by the kind of experiences that Shankar's company is creating with 5G. So we're freed from the dependency on silly devices and things that tether us, and we have more learning in the real world.
Are we looking at an era, Paul? Just how many of you? I'm sure many of you here familiar with the term e-business. Remember that? We used to have.
Oh yeah.
Are we looking at an i-business era? Right. So that's where every business now is an intelligent business.
Yep.
Right. So is something along those lines?
I think it's an intelligent business. I'd go a step further and think I'd go to H business. I think every business becomes a human business.
Humanizing technology.
I think it's going to be around optimizing, around human. That the success is going to be deeply human services because this technology is getting invasive and pervasive, and we're either going to reject it or we're going to embrace it. I think we'll embrace it because that's human nature, which means companies that are human and build our trust, like you're talking about, will be the winners, and it's those human services that'll define the future. So with that, we're out of time. No, seriously, we are kind of running right out of time here. I didn't tell you this, but I'm going to ask you to just give your final takeaway, just a sentence or a few words on what you would, just from what you know and what you see and what you've heard tonight, what advice would you give people to think about? I'll start just so you can have a moment to think about it since I'm surprising you with it. My takeaway, if I had to summarize 3 things that I'd go away and really think hard about in my organization, which I'm doing, the 3 things would be technology, because I think that the three words would be technology, talent, and trust. Technology, because it's a constantly moving playing field. And if it's not a one-time transition, if you don't have the DNA in your organization to innovate and experiment with technology, you're going to have trouble. So technology is important. Talent is critical. And I keep saying that the best investment you can make in innovation, the best investment you can make in AI is investing in your people in the way that Shankar described, and you won't lose by investing in people and the talent. Really think about that. And then the third thing is trust. I really believe that trust is a differentiator. We don't have sophisticated enough notions really of how to build trust. You gave some great examples of how to do it, but I think we need to codify that more in our companies. That's some of the work we're trying to do. So technology, talent, and trust are the things I'd encourage everyone to think about.
You made my job easier, so I'm going to complete that. Culture. Technology, talent, trust, culture. I think, because at the end of the day, everything that we talk about here, I'm sure everyone sees this as well. Culture, is so important in making sure that, in all aspects of this, right? Examples that we talked about, responsible AI. What does that mean? How do we make sure that we are embracing diversity and inclusion now to make sure that the machines that we are building for tomorrow do not have those unconscious biases fed in, right? So those are the things that we should be looking at, how we structure our teams, empowering our people, all of that. So I would just,
Let me ask you a provocative follow-up question. So
we can just keep going back.
We'll just keep going. We'll continue this over here in a minute. So how do machines impact the culture? Is the new culture of your company not just the people, but the humans plus the machines?
How do machines impact the culture?
Yeah.
So I think the first reaction is clearly it's perceived as, oh, it's going to displace my job, right? And that's the reason why making sure that we are very transparent with the employees on exactly where we are going, how we plan to use this, and the part that they're going to play and what they'll have to do to upskill themselves is critical. So really what we're looking for is, within Verizon, we talk about just be relentlessly curious and never stop learning. How do we foster that learning culture within the organization? At all levels, right? You have to be a lifelong student through this. So I think the best way to address that is you need to, if you are not up for always upskilling, reskilling yourself, and want to make sure you have the relevant skills of the future, then you're self-selecting yourself.
That's a great answer, and that's great. And I would add to that too that I think as you think about culture going forward, culture is really defined by the behaviors that people have and how they act. Machines have behaviors and are acting, so I think you need to, as you think about the culture of your organization, you need to think about every machine behavior and action and make sure that's contributing to the culture you want as well. Okay, well, that's a great discussion. Please join me in thanking Shankar for a great discussion. Raman and Mark, stand up. Thank you, Raman and Mark. Thanks to our event team for putting out a great event. Thank you, team, back there. And thanks to all of you for joining us on a rainy night. The ceiling is literally dripping on you.
Yeah, I can see that.
So thank you for taking the time, coming out and joining us on a pretty rough evening. I hope it's been an enjoyable evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you.